Topping today's news, the FNM names its candidate for the West Grand Bahama and Bimini by-election. JCN gets an exclusive interview with Shane Gibson ahead of the PLP vote for a by-election candidate. And the Customs and Immigration Union files a trade dispute over the appointment of William Pratt as acting director of immigration. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Jarino Saunders. This is your JCN Evening News. It is a pleasure to have you join us. Bishop Ricardo Grant has officially been ratified by the Free National Movement as its candidate in the upcoming by-election for West Grand Bahama and Bimini, a seat left vacant due to the sudden death of Member of Parliament, the late Obie Wilscombe. Bishop Grant won the nomination following the FNM's council meeting held at its headquarters here in the capital on Thursday evening. Party leader Michael Pintard threw his full support behind the bishop.
FNMs, it's a good night. Tonight, we have confirmed the standard bearer for West Grand Bahama and Bimini, Ricardo Grant and Mrs. Grant. It's going to be a family affair. And we are calling on all FNMs, independents, and right-thinking Bahamians to support the change that is taking place in West Grand Bahama and Bimini. We fully expect that when this election is called, we believe that in less than 6 weeks, Ricardo Grant will be the new Member of Parliament.
Bishop Grant is a resident of 8 Mile Rock, Grand Bahama. He says he has been working the area for quite some time with feeding programs and outreach initiatives. He says his goal is to make life better for all of his constituents.
We have come, and we have come with one agenda in mind and heart, and that is to stand to represent the fine people of West Grand Bahama and Bimini. Stand to be a voice, stand to ensure that we present to them the representation that we know that the citizens of West Grand Bahama do in fact deserve to have. It is our heart, it is our mind and our soul and our aim and object to continue to press and push forward to ensure greater and better for our constituents, to our fellow men here, even in this country.
Asked by JCN for his response to critics who say the church and state cannot coexist, well, the bishop had this to say.
Let me answer that as straightforward and as candid as I possibly can. When you talk about church and state, I believe the name itself already gives you the distinction, that the fact that we have church and then we have state. But let us understand the mission of church and state. The mission of church and state should always be the same thing: the people in whom they serve. We serve and we serve people. And when you talk about church, church has always been about service. It's been about counsel. It's about feeding the sick, feeding the hungry, visiting the sick, visiting the homeless. When you talk about state, state should be ensuring that its citizens always have the best quality of life that it should serve. So when you talk about church and state, they are separate, but their function and their service to their people is the same.
That was FNM's newly announced candidate for the West Grand Bahama and Bimini by-election, Bishop Ricardo Grant. Meanwhile, the Progressive Liberal Party is expected to select a candidate this evening when the party's National General Council will vote and select from 10 potential candidates. The Coalition of Independents, they're expected to officially name their candidate on Sunday afternoon at 5 p.m. As the by-election for the West Grand Bahama and Bimini constituency draws near, the race to be nominated as the PLP's candidate seems to be heating up as the party looks to keep the constituency under the PLP banner, with up to 10 potential candidates looking for the nod. Former cabinet minister under the Perry Christie administration, Shane Gibson, has gotten a lot of attention. He recently wrote a letter to the party requesting that there be a secret ballot when voting for the candidates take place this evening at the National General Council meeting.
one of the PLP's core fundamental principles is the how we deal with democracy, right, and the democratic process, and to make sure that things not only done in the right way and done in a democratic way, but it's seen and believed to be done in the right and democratic way. And we've been reliably informed that in a way to try to minimize democracy at its fullest, that they're intending to have the vote at council tonight by open voting. And so the Constitution is very clear. It says that anytime there's a vote such as this, in this instance, it must be by secret ballot vote. And so they've had ample time, even if they didn't think about it. I gave them a letter yesterday where I requested that they make sure act in accordance with the Constitution. And so I'm hopeful that they would do the right thing and to make sure that we exercise complete democracy and transparency during this process.
Mr. Gibson, who appeared to have support of the branch members of the Grand Bahama and Bimini constituency, has faced resistance from some quarters in the PLP. However, today he told us this is nothing new for a political party and should prove to be a non-issue in the event that he becomes the PLP candidate.
Listen to me, what's happening now is nothing new to any political organization. You know, this instance has been around for the last maybe 75 years, I mean, a very long time. And so there's no issue. I mean, whenever there's a battle, right? People have persons that they support, and the only thing is you pick up the pieces and you move on at the end of the day. And so this is nothing new. This is not the first time you have two persons or multiple persons trying to contest a particular position in the party. And so this is something that's very, very common to the PLP, and I don't see any fallout, because at the end of the day, this is democracy at its best. That I mean, if I were to be given a nomination, I expect to be working with them. I worked with them before. You know, there are a couple of persons who were not there when I was in last, but I mean, other than that, you know, quite a number of them was there, and and so I interact with them on a regular basis now. And so I don't foresee there being any issue or any fallout if I were to get a nomination.
Mr. Gibson was speaking to JCN reporters in an exclusive interview just before he appeared as guest on Jones & Company with host Kristen Jones. That show, Jones & Company, that airs on Love 97 Radio on Sunday at 5 p.m. and on JCN TV Sunday evening at 7:30 p.m. The Parliamentary Registration Department plans to modernize the registration process. Acting Parliamentary Commissioner Arthur Taylor said on Thursday voters' cards, similar to driver's cards, are now in the works. Mr. Taylor said this is something the department is looking to implement in the next 2 years during the next local government elections. However, he says there is no consideration being given to introducing electronic voting.
Not electronic. We may change the voter's card to something different in terms of the something a little more. I like to use the term user-friendly, but I can't speak to that because it's an ongoing process now. I met some things going on when I came in February. They were well on the way to modernizing it to a credit card size card, and we will speak to that shortly, because I think that they're rounding that off now, and that should be able to be launched by the next local government elections.
Meanwhile, Mr. Taylor suggested that electronic voting is unreliable due to the risk of hacking.
And the process itself, I don't think is going to change anytime soon. I think you're well aware that when you create a machine to vote, someone is in their basement creating a way to get into it. I think they're the challenges we're facing. Our friends to the west of us are having that difficulty now, in that they're not reliable, those machines. Well, I can't say that. It's not my call, we put it that way. But I don't see that we've been asked to look into it. We've not been asked to look at anything relating to voting electronically, but just modernizing the process in terms of, with the new card, you go online to apply for your voter's card through the portal, rather than just walking in here and saying you want to register. You put your documents online, and we'll give you an appointment date to come in to do it. So it'll be just a flowing thing rather than the long lines, you see.
Mr. Taylor said the only thing that will have to happen is individuals who are presently registered will have to come in just to get their picture taken once again. And there will probably be some biometric components such as facial recognition or fingerprinting. The Bahamas Customs, Immigration and Allied Workers Union has filed a trade union dispute with the Department of Labor following the Davis administration's appointment of William Pratt as acting director of the Department of Immigration. Mr. Pratt was brought in after Free National Movement leader Michael Pintard leaked documents showing that senior immigration officers were concerned about former Immigration Minister Keith Bell's alleged interference in their work. Former Director Keturah Ferguson retired not too long after. The Customs, Immigration and Allied Workers Union claims that it is unlawful to appoint a contract worker as head of the department. Deputy Press Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, Keishla Adderley, responding to those claims, noted that Mr. Pratt was a former director.
Mr. William Pratt, who is acting immigration director, is was within the Immigration Department, a career immigration officer. Now, what the Attorney General's office is doing at this point is reviewing that ruling to see if it applies under these circumstances. I hasten to add, though, that Mr. Pratt is fulfilling that role on an interim basis. In the meantime, the government is working on a succession plan so that a permanent immigration director will be put in place.
In 2021, the union secured a Supreme Court victory after arguing that the Minnis administration could not appoint Clarence Russell, who was a contract worker, as the acting director of immigration. Ms. Adderley says the Attorney General is currently reviewing that ruling. And finally, in this segment, the outlook for the Exumas has never been more promising. So says Member of Parliament for the Exumas and Ragged Island and Rum Key. That's Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper, while sharing at the 17th Annual Exuma Business Outlook on Thursday. The Deputy Prime Minister, who was the keynote speaker, telling those in attendance that the Exumas has become the envy of the Bahamas with more than $1 billion in investments and major infrastructural upgrades, including to airports on the island and its keys. Funding has already been negotiated to restart the redevelopment of the Exuma International Airport.
We have our airport that's going to begin construction in due course. And I say due course because I don't want to give you a specific date, because after the date I give you, my phone starts ringing. But we got the money, and it's going to happen. And your MP negotiated the money to ensure that not just Georgetown is done, but Black Point, we're going to have a new runway there, 5,000 to 6,000 feet. We're going to be able to land small jets right there. There's something special about what's going to happen at Black Point. Remember, I told you this. We're going to develop the new airport at Staniel Key, new runways, new FBO, and we're going to develop a small terminal similar to what we did in Ragged Island at Farmers Key as well.
DPM Cooper, who also holds the portfolio of tourism, investments and aviation, says no part of Exuma or Ragged Island is going to be left untouched. In March of this year, the government issued requests for pre-qualification RFPQ for the $260 million airport redevelopment dubbed Family Island Renaissance Program, seeking entities to enter into a public-private partnership with the government to redevelop 14 Family Island airports. In April, the aviation minister acknowledged that the Bahamas was caught behind the 8 ball over the need to upgrade airport infrastructure.
We are continuing the work as it relates to the other 13 airports across the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. So we want to ensure that the renaissance and growth that we're seeing in Exuma, that we also put the infrastructure in place to ensure that this happens across the rest of the islands of the Bahamas as well. I see some Eleuthera people looking at me funny. So North Eleuthera is going to be next, and we're going to be building airports consistently all across the islands of the Bahamas.
The cost to redevelop the 4 airports in the Exumas is pegged at $71 million. The Exuma International Airport, Morristown, Great Exuma, with the lion's share at $65 million, Black Point Airport, Farmers Key Airport, and Staniel Key Airport will be redeveloped at $2 million apiece. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back after these commercials.